So it's now been a year and a half since our first look at Kawai's CA501. In fact, it was at the NAMM 2023 show that we really got our first sit down. And we published that video, people really enjoyed it, but it wasn't the truly expansive look that we normally take a look at the instrument, and it's now been a year and a half since. So we're gonna talk about the action, definitely gonna talk about the new SKEX competition sample that's on here, gonna discuss the speaker performance, and some of the necessary tweaks that I went in and did to get this instrument performing incredibly well. Now first things first, let's discuss the action. Now the CA401 and 501 use a slightly shortened key stick compared to the grand actions that are on the 701 and the 901. Now this does a couple of things. It's going to create a greater variance in the amount of pressure you need to play between the front of the key and the back of the key, which is just, of course, the basic geometry of how levers work. But kind of along the same lines, the other effect that it has, to me anyway, is even playing closer to the outside of the key, the 501 and the 401 have a slightly heavier feel to them than the 701 and the 901, which to me is not a bad thing because I usually wind up going in on the 701, 901 and adjusting the key touch to be slightly heavier. Now the action is also equipped with a triple sensor and escapement simulation, and both the black key and the white key surfaces are a nice, very micro-textured matte finish. And because these are acoustic wood key sticks that are sitting on the same type of pins and balance rails that a real acoustic piano functions on, it's got the same lateral left and right give that's supposed to be there, which is probably one of the biggest benefits you get from playing on these Kawai wooden actions, is that perfect amount of lateral give. Now moving to the speaker system, this thing has a whopping 100-watt speaker system. Now it's becoming commonplace for the very top flagship models to all have well over 100-watt speaker systems when you get into things like the LX9 or the GP9 or Yamaha's N3X or Kawai's CA901. But for something that's kind of mid to upper mid tier like that, 100 watts is still a little bit unusual. And this is where I think the default setting for the EQ on this machine does a little bit of a disservice to the potential that the instrument has. Right out of the box, this piano has a very warm and to me almost a bit of a woofy bass response. But here are the settings I've adjusted to completely, to my ear, flip that on its head and get a beautifully warm mid-tone, tame the bass, and get a little more detail out of the mid and upper mid sections of this piano. For one, I've adjusted the EQ setting to mid boost. Two, I've gone in and adjusted the voicing to dynamic. And three, I've gone and adjusted the hammer noise up to 7. For anyone who's working a lot with these various resonance engine editors or just piano tone editors generally, I have found that adjusting the hammer noise is one of those quick hacks that actually gives you the type of high-end detail that you don't realize you're missing. So I usually boost that up a little bit. And then of course, connecting the keys with those speaker systems is Kawai's latest version of their XL harmonic imaging engine, which is now loaded with the SKEX competition. Now I've spoken briefly about this in other videos. What is the difference between the normal SKEX that they've had before in the competition? Well, it's this. There are two versions of Shigeru Kawai's out there for people who are not super plugged into the acoustic piano world. The first version of this came out in the early 2000s and ran up to about 2012, 2013. And that version is actually what's loaded in most Kawai digital pianos. When it refers to the SKEX, it's that first iteration of that concert grand piano. When they released the newer concert series, which has the L denoted in the model codes, there were several things that changed. They increased the amount of maple in the rim, they thickened the rim slightly, they thickened the stretcher bar, and they changed the way that they were voicing and shaping the hammers. And that's the piano which has now been sampled in this and everything above it. Now it isn't just the piano that Kawai likes to make a really big deal of. The other thing that they love pointing out anytime that they talk to me at their booths or at some of these shows is the fact that these are unfiltered, lossless samples at multiple sample layers. And we're not just talking about 3 or 4. They won't disclose how many it is exactly, but it's been implied that it could be as many as 6. Now the 501 does not have the SKEX rendering engine, which you will find on your top CA901s, 701s, and the Nova series. And all that means is that we've got multi-channel input and output that you can select from. Kind of like the quasi-analog equivalent of what Roland's done with their multi-channel modeling engines on the newest LX and GP. Now something I've observed is that given its price point and its stature in the line, the Kawai cabinetry on the 501 probably has one of the lowest profiles that you're going to find. Yamahas and Rolands that are at this price are actually going to sit a little bit higher. And so that may be a good thing or a bad thing depending on the kind of presence you're looking for in the room. And it's also going to have a bit of an impact on how much ambient sound you get versus direct sound from the speakers. Now, one of the things that Kawai has done in this instrument, as well as the lower and upper versions of the CN and CA, is they've all gone with 360 diffusers in all of their top facing speakers. So rather than being directed up or in any specific direction, it really is kind of spraying sound out in all directions equally at about a 45-degree angle. For players with acoustic experience looking to transition into a digital, and you just don't have the budget to get into something like Kawai's Nova series with the full acoustic action, the dynamic response, the tonal detail, and the touch on the CA501 makes this a really great standout in the industry. And I could easily see this instrument having another 3 to 5 years worth of shelf life before Kawai would have any need at all to really consider refreshing it. It has a polyphony of 256. We've already covered that it's got 50 by 50 watts on each side in terms of amplification. It's equipped with 4 speakers, 2 facing down and 2 facing up. It's got stereo 1/4-inch inputs and outputs. It's got a nice, easy to navigate display and is available in 3 colors. So we'll leave you with a little bit of playing, and thank you so much for checking out the video.